Hi, and welcome back to Ham 101. I'm Herb NZ0F. And Ham 101 is the video series designed to help new hams or folks that have been inactive for a long time try to get reconnected into the hobby. Today we're going to follow up the last episode where we talked about upgrading your handheld transmitter and trying to get the most you could out of that in terms of transmit power and clarity and things like that. Today we're going to talk about, okay, what's your next step after that? If you've done all you can with your handheld and you're still not getting a good signal, and people are complaining about your signal quality and things like that, your next step then is going to be a mobile radio installed as a base station. Now, mobile radios can either be installed in your shack, like I've got back here, or they can be installed in your car. I'm not going to talk about mobile installations in terms of installing in your car. There's a great website by Alan K0BG that I'll link to in the description below, and he has kind of written the Bible on mobile installation of amateur radio equipment of all sorts. So he starts with kind of the most basic installation facts, and then he moves up into the big HF installations with amplifiers and things like that. But he's got a lot of great advice. It's a lot of good reading. Rather than recreate the wheel there, I'll just go with what he says. So I've used his advice on a lot of different installations, and it's always served me very well. So if you've gotten all you're going to get out of your handheld with an exterior antenna or whatever, then you're going to need more power. You're going to need a bigger radio, and you've got some basic choices. So the first thing is what are you going to use for radio? So there are several choices here. There's three basic choices. So there's single band radios, which is what this is. This is a Yaesu FT2900. This is a 2 meter only radio. It'll receive other bands, but it'll only transmit on 2 meters. So that's one of your choices. This is kind of the low end. There are cheaper versions of this. I think the FT1900 is probably Yaesu's entry level into this. And again, we're talking analog here, not digital. The next level up is going to be a dual band radio, and that's not going to be unlike the FT70 or FT7800 that's behind me over here. That's actually an older model. The newer current model of that is FT7900. Now that'll do 2 bands. It'll do 2 meters and it'll do 440, but only one at a time. So you can only listen to one band at a time and listen to one frequency at a time. The next upgrade from that is going to be what's called a dual receive radio. So this is going to be dual bands, and it's going to be, you can listen to 2 different frequencies at once, whether they're on the same band or on 2 different bands. This is the Yaesu FT8800. These have been around for a long time. I don't think they actually still make these, but you can find these on the used market pretty easily. The modern version of that is behind me, and that is the Yaesu FTM400. Now, all the major manufacturers make these dual receive, the single band, the dual band, and the dual receive radios. And again, the price points go up as you start to get into these. So the single band radios are going to be your cheapest option, but again, you're going to be stuck with one band. You can get them in either 2 meter or you can get them in 440, but you're going to just have one band to work with. So choose wisely there if that's the way you want to go. The dual band radios are a little bit more expensive, and the dual receive dual band radios are going to be your most expensive option, and then you get into digital. Now, a couple of caveats here. One is I would when you get into the mobile radio market, I would recommend you not go with one of the Chinese manufacturers for analog FM radios. Now, if you're going to get into DMR, and we'll talk a little bit about the whole digital conundrum here in a second, but if you're going to go with digital, then if you're going to go DMR, you're pretty much stuck with a Chinese manufacturer, because a lot of the major manufacturers for the Japanese radios, the Kenwoods, the Yaesus, the ICOMs, they don't make DMR radios at this point in time. But if you're gonna go with strictly analog FM, I would recommend you not go with one of the Chinese manufacturers. You can get one cheap. You can get them a lot cheaper. You can get dual band, dual receive radios for a fraction of what you'd pay Yaesu or ICOM or Kenwood. But I don't think you're going to be happy with that. My experience with those has not been good. I've heard from a lot of people who bought them and kind of regretted their decision. They're a lot harder to program. They're a lot quirkier in a lot of different ways. So I just stay away from those. Again, this is going to be a radio that's probably going to be sitting in your shack for a long time. You might as well bite the bullet and make an investment here and go forward with that. Now, let's go back to the digital conundrum here. There are actually 3 major digital formats available in amateur radio right now. There is D-Star, which has been around for a long time. There is DMR, which is an adaptation of a more of a business band format, but it's very popular in amateur radio right now. And there's Yaesu Fusion. Now, we'll do a whole nother video on the pros and cons of that and how each one of those stacks up against the other and things like that. So, but I'll give you two pieces of advice on this. And one of those is going to be look and see what's active in your area. You may have a lot of Yaesu Fusion repeaters and not very many DMR repeaters, or vice versa, or D-Star may be active in your location and the others aren't. So that's going to dictate your decision to one degree or another. But if you have a lot of activity on both Fusion or on any of those three modes, or all three of those modes, Fusion is going to be the easiest to get into. So that's going to be, I suspect I'll get some pushback on that discussion, but from a new ham standpoint, if there's active Fusion repeaters in your area, my recommendation is to go with that, because that's going to be the easiest one for you to get started with. You may get into DMR and D-Star later, but that gets into a lot more programming and a lot more difficulty. So that's my recommendation for new hams just getting into the hobby. I'm sure I'll get comments on that, but that's where I'm going. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So what are you going to need then to put one of these radios together and put them on the air? So you will notice that even though I have a microphone and a speaker here, I don't have an antenna. I don't have a power source. So that's the two things you're going to need in addition to your radio. So these plug into, we talked about SO239 and PL259 connectors in episode 11. These plug into one of those cables, and you'll need an outdoor antenna with that. Don't try to run these with an indoor antenna. You're not going to be very satisfied with the results. So hopefully if you put up an outdoor antenna to use with your handheld, that same antenna will work with this radio. And so you'll need one of those and be able to route that conduit, route that cable into your shack. The second thing you're going to need, in addition, or actually the third thing you're going to need, in addition to the radio and the antenna, is a power supply. These mobile radios, as they are called, operate off of 12 volts. So they're designed to go in a car. So they're very easily adaptable for use inside your shack, but you're going to need a power supply. You're going to need an external box here that plugs into 120 volts, plugs into the wall, and puts out 12 volts DC, so that it mimics essentially your car battery. Now, these are available in a lot of different flavors and sizes and things like that. There are a lot of different manufacturers for these. Astron, which is what this is one of the good manufacturers. Samlex is another good manufacturer there. But you're going to need to size this to power to provide enough current to this radio to make it work correctly. You want to make sure you size the power supply correctly. So if we go back to the 8800 and we look in the manual, it tells me that in transmit on 2 meters, which is the highest power, this radio requires 8.5 amps at 12 volts DC. This particular power supply, I think, if I look at the nameplate on the power supply, puts out 10 amps continuous at 12 volts DC, and it's capable of doing 12 amps 33% of the time on a 33% duty cycle. So that power supply is sufficient to power this radio. Now, that said, if you're going to have more than one radio, you're going to want a bigger power supply. You may just want a bigger power supply just to provide some additional headroom. So this 10 amp power supply is just barely big enough to power this particular radio. Bigger is always better. And so you want to give that some consideration also. So those are the things, that's kind of the basic pieces and parts that you're going to need to put together your first station in the shack. And I hope that you'll do that, because I think once you get that in the shack and you can leave that on all the time and let it monitor the frequency, you'll find out what repeaters are active and things like that, and you won't be worrying about charging batteries or having your battery charged if you want to talk on the radio. And it just makes life a lot easier, and you'll be heard better with a stronger signal and be able to reach more repeaters in your area, and hopefully you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of the hobby. So that's kind of the basic approach to putting a radio in your shack. And again, you know, if you're doing one in the car, look for the link to k0bg.com below and see what he has to say and what he can offer for you. And I think that's the end of this topic for today. So as always, if you have comments or questions, you can comment to this video or you can email me directly. And we look forward to those, and we always like suggestions for new topics for new hams. So until next time, this is Herb, NZ0F73.